Hi, I'm Jim Gordon, and welcome to another edition of Small Cap Power. Joining us today is David Morgan, the publisher of themorganreport.com. As publisher of the Morgan Report, David has appeared on CNBC, Fox Business, BNN Canada. He has been interviewed by the Wall Street Journal, Future Magazine's Gold Report, and numerous other publications. He is an author. He appears on radio. He's a lecturer. And again, David Morgan joins us right now. David, welcome to Small Cap Power.
Jim, thank you for having me. It's been a while. The last time we saw each other, it was in the flesh, not on Zoom, but it's good to see you.
That's right. Seems like 100 years ago with what's been going on the last 6-8 months, but it's good to see you even if it's virtual. David, let's start by talking about themorganreport.com. Give our viewers an insight as to what that's all about.
Sure. I've been interested in investing since I was very young. And I started investing actually at 16 years of age, believe it or not. But I really gravitated toward honest money very early on after studying how the banking system works. So long story short, my dream really was to start a newsletter. And I accomplished that back in about 1998 or so. I've been publishing for about 22 years on the internet, and I'm still passionate about it. The Morgan Report covers basically the resource sector, and usually from the equity side. But I also look at everything, the bond market, the US dollar, different currencies, special situations, covered almost every mineral out there over the last couple of decades. And really get involved, just go and get a free newsletter. I have a paid service and a free service. So if you go to themorganreport.com, first name and email, verify it's you, you'll get on our free list. And I do a lot of interviews like this that are public domain. Also writing the blog. I've started to publish a written content on the blog again that just started about 3 weeks ago. And so tons of information for free. And then if you want to go one step more, then hit the subscribe button on the website. And I've got a couple levels of service, so pretty well explained. You can go in there, and of course, like anybody in this business, that's ethical, and almost everyone is. If you don't like it, you can, bow out gracefully, and no harm done. So it's paid service and a free service, both, really. I mean, I do a lot, as I said, for educational purposes. And if you want to get involved with the stocks that I like and why, and have us follow them for you, and, timing and everything else that we do, then you have to pay for that.
Okay. I want to talk gold, but before we do that, I want to talk silver. You have been called the silver guru. Now, you spoke in August at the MIF gathering under kind of the headline of why silver, why now? Let's explain that.
Well, silver is extremely volatile, and it goes through these long periods of, like what I coined years ago, it scares you out, it wears you out. You can have these extreme big moves up and down. Most people from the retail side especially trade only from the long side, or buy only. They don't really sell or sell short. But even short sellers can have a religious experience when silver does what it does occasionally, like it did for March. I mean, it's more than doubled from the $12 spike low that we saw in March up to, $30, and now it's backed off somewhat. So I say it could scare you out or wear you out. Well, it's at the end of the wear you out phase. I mean, most people that were discouraged had left the market. It was a quiet market. The old adage, never sell a quiet market. So everything that I've learned, and I'm still learning, believe me, was, this is like the perfect setup for silver to start to move. This is, why silver, why now? It's got all the properties that gold has as a safe haven, but not officially. Gold is really more mainstream and establishment than silver by far. Even though Wall Street hardly ever talks about gold, you might hear it more on Bay Street or House Street, but you don't hear it much on Wall Street. But nonetheless, the big money managers, the fat cats, they all know about gold. They just don't talk about it much. That has changed, Jim, as you well know, as Mr. Warren Buffett himself. The pet rock gold guy has actually bought a great deal of Barrick, and it only represents about less than 1% of Berkshire Hathaway's holdings, but nonetheless, he has dipped his toe in the water. So that's actually changed the complexity of the gold market, in my view.
Let's talk a bit about the gold market, David. Can you tell us about COMEX? How much of the gold market does COMEX, I should say, represent?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, there's so much internet discussion, lectures, talk, conspiracy revolving around the COMEX. I mean, first of all, we have to give it its due. It is one of, if not it's the primary and one of the ways that the price is set. So it's used to be an open outcry system. Really, it's all electronic now. But the price is determined by the buy and sell orders. And these are contracts to buy gold. And a contract is merely a piece of paper and usually is not taken to the delivery status. In other words, it's a bunch of paper trades that set the price. And me and many others for years have kind of gnawed at this being really not the ideal way to set the price. Also, the London Bullion Management Association also does a fix on the gold and silver prices. So these are two authoritative type of structures, entities that set the price. The thing that you asked me though, Jim, is that I think it's overblown in some ways. And the reason I say that is if you look at all the open interest in gold, which is actually pretty high relative to what it's been in the past, we're talking 50 million ounces of gold in ounces, round numbers. And we mine about twice that, 100 million ounces. So, if I was to be called into court as an expert witness, and I said, David, how do you analyze the COMEX as far as is it fair to have this many contracts in gold? I would have to answer yes. If you're actually manipulating, managing, squashing, controlling, any metaphor you want, any adjective you want to use, but it only represents half of a year's mining supply, it'd be hard for me to truthfully say that's way too much. It is a case of the tail wagging the dog. I don't want to talk out of both sides of my mouth, but it has greater authority in the price setting mechanism, I think, than it should. But on balance, and looking at both sides of the coin, it represents not very much. And one thing that no one ever talks about, Jim, so thank you for asking the question, is what is the OTC market doing? What's OTC, David? It's called the over-the-counter market. This is where places like CPM Group out of New York, set their own private contracts with the mining industry, for example, and they have a contract to sell gold at a certain delivery at a certain time, at a certain quality, perhaps even specifying what refiner they're going to use, although that would be in every contract. So that market is much, much larger than the transparent market that everybody gripes about. So I'm probably on a rant, Jim, but I think it's important for people to put it into perspective that David Morgan said, and it's not just me, it's a fact, that 50 million ounces is if all the open interest was taken delivery on, it would only represent half of the year's mine supply. And guess what? Not all of that open interest ever takes delivery. It's a small portion. So it's a distorted market, but I can't say that there's too many participants, as some have alluded. I'd have to be honest and no, it's not too many.
We're talking with David Morgan. He is the publisher and the man behind themorganreport.com. David, it doesn't really need to be said, but this has been one unprecedented year so far and everything that's happened. I always like to get insights from guys like you who are on the front lines. You've talked about the next recession that's coming. Can you talk a bit about what you think is going to happen? Is it going to be worse than we've had in the past? What do you see coming over the next 3-4 years?
Yeah, I do not like to be Dora Doom, believe me, but I call them as I see them. And without being too over the top, I see further social unrest. I see further supply chain breakdowns. I see a squeeze in the food supply, therefore prices will increase. I see unavailability of products that we took for granted, let's say 6 months or a year ago, becoming unavailable or scarce. I see a shift in people's buying habits where, the entertainment side suffers. It's more like stream movies at home because you can't go to the movie theater. Or if you did, it's a budget item. You don't want to go in there and spend, $10 on that popcorn that's worth 12 cents. You'd rather stay at home. So I see a very large shift really across the board, except for the super wealthy. And even they, they can't open up a movie theater, but they probably have their own. But the point being that everyone is going to have to adjust to this new situation, and it isn't going to be easy for some people. I think the best information I can project or state is to stay flexible, adjust to the reality that what is, and don't get your emotions too involved. I mean, I can say that with some authority at my age and my experience in these very dynamic markets. I've learned to have ice water in my veins. Not too much gets me upset, but a lot of shifts, Jim, a lot. And just be aware that, human beings have survived almost anything, very, very harsh conditions, both, mentally, spiritually, and physically, and we always come through. So I think the attitude that, we can get through it together. And I've noticed in my own little travels here, and I'm not flying around anymore, people seem to be a little bit kinder, and I think that's great. And I try to reflect that back in my occasional encounters all masked up. So I'll throw it out there to that.
I want to talk to you about, as I mentioned in our introduction, you are a king of media across all forms of media. You were there at the beginning back in the 90s. Let's talk about this movie that you're involved in called, I don't want to say ominously, but The Four Horsemen.
That was serendipity, if there ever was one. I was at a conference in London put on by a fund manager friend of mine, Ned Neeler Leyland. If you can ever Google Ned Neeler Leyland and watch anything he has to say, I definitely would tell you it's worth your time. And after that event, we had like a cocktail party or whatever, and I'm just kind of meandering around like everyone else. And this woman came up to me and said, could I do an interview? They're making a film. And I said, wow, I'd love to do that. You bet. And she said, well, how about, Wednesday? I said, no, I'm leaving tomorrow. And she said, well, let me find out. She got on her cell phone, called her husband. I didn't know if she was, I didn't know who she was. I didn't know. She said, could you do it now? I go, yeah, I'd be happy to do it now. So we drove across town, sat down, and I don't want to exaggerate, Jim, but I think we spoke for an hour. I really think it was 2 hours. It seemed 5 minutes. I mean, I'm talking my passion, talking monetary history, talking about current affairs. So they did that with several people, much, much more prominent than I am. But they put all these interviews together in this film called the Four Horsemen film that you can watch for free on YouTube, stream it, whatever. And if you're interested, I can't find it. You can find it. I mean, just put in Four Horsemen film. But on my website, themorganreport.com, go to the About tab, and on the About tab, the film's right there. You just click it and watch it from there if you want to. But it really, even as it's gotten, it's older than when we filmed it, still every point on there. I just watched it recently, probably for the 5th or 6th time, and not because I'm in it, because I can learn from others, but it's really as timely now, I think, as when they first put it to the public, because it talks about all of the problems we have throughout the financial system, and it also offers some solutions at the end. I assume you watched it, Jim. Do you want to comment back? Do you think it was worth the hour and a half to watch it?
I always like it when I can watch guys like you in your ilk, because I do learn. I'm the common guy on the street. So whether I'm interviewing someone like you or watching something you're in, I watched a bunch of your YouTube videos. You have a very good way of kind of plain terming it for people like me. So yeah, I definitely it's definitely worth a watch. And as you said, it's you can find it through your website. So I would definitely give it a. As a former film critic, I would say definitely worth a watch.
That's why I asked. Thanks.
David, always a pleasure to talk to you, sir. I hope you're staying well. We've been talking with David Morgan. He is the publisher, the man behind themorganreport.com. Definitely worth checking out. David, thank you for joining us today on Small Cap Power.
Jim, it's always fun. Thanks so much.
I look forward to doing this again in person with you next time. Thank you. And thank you for watching another edition of Small Cap Power. I'm Jim Gordon.